I'm Jeff Clark. I serve as co-president of the Board of Trustees for the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst. I use he, him pronouns. So welcome to you all, old friends, new, young and old, on the Zoom here in the sanctuary. You are a central part of our celebration today. Whether it is your first or 1000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are all here with us. We're one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We're growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm the Reverend Rachael Hayes, minister of the Unitarian Universalist. Let's start that again. Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst. I use she, her pronouns. Today, we're reflecting on Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s call to nonviolence. So, as Jeff alluded, you may have noticed that our local COVID numbers are going up again. Masks are required in the sanctuary and religious education classes while the risk is elevated. And any of our worship leaders who unmask have had a negative COVID test this morning. We come together through the streets, through the weather, through Wi-Fi and Ethernet, through time, to share this moment. We dare to put down for 1 hour the barriers of individualism and find the joy of connecting with one another, of connecting our hearts to something larger than ourselves. We come together to affirm that love in action can change the world, can lead to freedom the world has not yet tasted. Come, let us worship. I invite you to say the words for the lighting of the chalice with me. We light this flame to invite a world of peace, where we heal the wounds, where we share what we have with one another, where justice is another word for relationship, and we listen for what love has to say.
Down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, gonna lay down my sword and shield. Down by the riverside, gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more.
That's not right. You got to do it right. Sorry. So I'll get you started on this one. Clap, 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 clap. Second verse. Yeah.
Down by the riverside.
Yeah.
Down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my burden. Down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Shake hands around the world, everywhere, 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 everywhere.
My name is Andrew Coate. I serve as the Director of Religious Education here, and I use he, him pronouns. And today's Time for All Ages truly is a time for all ages. I expect full audience participation. Who here has ever played a game of Monopoly? Monopoly. Okay. What happens, and you can just shout it out, what happens when you land on free parking? You get the money. That is nowhere in the rule book. What happens if you land on a property that you don't want to buy or you don't have the money to buy? Nothing? Yeah, it goes up for auction, it turns out. We all have these rules that we play by. And it turns out that if you're all following the same rules, it doesn't really matter what the official rule book says. I used to play a card game with my grandfather that he and I both referred to as I Win, in which I won. It was sort of like the game War, but if I could make up a rule to make it so I won, then I won anyway. It had to be a rule that made sense, at least mathematically, but that was about it. So today in service, we're talking about nonviolence and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And now the rules at the time that we're talking about today might have said one thing, the official rule book. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had some guidelines, some principles of nonviolence that might not have been the official rule book, the official law of the United States. But they were principles that he believed that if people could agree to, that it would build a better society. So, I am going to read off the principle, and then I'm going to see if anyone would like to offer an example or even a rewording of that principle. Some of them are simpler, and some of them, number 4, are slightly more complicated. So, nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Rosa Parks, nonviolence, right? Not pushing back in a violent way, but resisting. It's not cowardly, it's courageous, and that's what Dr. King was trying to state. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Can anyone think of a way that that could be true? Finding common ground, finding that connection with other people. So not pushing against the people who are doing the thing that you don't like in a way that says, I don't want to be with you or near you, but seeking that connection. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice or evil, not people. So to me, this one really relates to that second one. We're seeking to get rid of behaviors and injustice that people don't like, not the people themselves. All right, here's that number 4. Nonviolence holds that unearned and voluntary suffering for a just cause can educate and transform people and society. I ran out of room. Right. Sometimes the suffering we experience, even, not that anyone deserves suffering, but even suffering that you didn't earn is part of what will change things. And Rachel has something
Mamie Till deciding to have an open casket funeral for her son, Emmett.
Emmett Till's open casket funeral. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Again, I feel like we're coming back to those 2 and 3. We're looking for connection. We're looking for that space where we can be together. And we're looking to get rid of the injustice. but not the people. And Brenda says a vertical system. And number 6, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. And so I know a lot of congregations will use the quote, oh my gosh, how am I blanking on that quote? The arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. And so I feel like keeping these principles in mind, even if they are not necessarily what you might have thought of as the rule book of how to win, is an important thing to keep in mind as we go forward in all of the times right now and in the future where we will see violence and hatred.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will turn away. I know my soul will learn its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will learn its wings. I know this rose will open.
Tender moment, holding so much of the history of war and the present of war. I invite us to rise in body and spirit in whatever way feels right to you, to sing a hymn that Dr. King particularly loved, Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the speech, Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence, which we heard at Riverside Church in New York City on April 4th, 1967. I realize that many of you remember this moment in the later 60s, whether you were one of the thousands at Riverside Church that day, or one of the hundreds of thousands in U.S. military service, or simply aware at whatever level from wherever you happen to be. The excerpt of the speech that we heard comes about 2/3 of the way through the total length. King talks about the context of the war itself, the Vietnamese struggle for independence from French colonial rule, and military aid first to France and then to Diem for the sake of thwarting communism in Southeast Asia. King cannot support the war because the military cost is depriving poor people in the US of a national budget for social programs, because the soldiers bearing the US burden of the war are disproportionately poor and disproportionately black, which means that the cost of the war rests more heavily with poor black families as well as soldiers. And because the US government is through military action is demonstrating that violence is the best way to solve problems. He has 5 demands for the US government. Stop the bombing, unilateral ceasefire as a show of good faith to begin negotiation, not at the end of it, to reduce US military presence in Thailand and Laos, to allow the people of Vietnam to choose their own government, and to get US troops out of Vietnam. This is a big deal anti-war platform, especially when King could have stayed in his lane, continued with race and poverty activism in the US, and kept his head down. US civil rights leaders were not all in agreement about the war. Whitney M. Young, who was the director of the National Urban League and also a Unitarian Universalist, so one of ours, was against King's platform, preferring to work with presidents and powerful figures to make incremental gains. The moral arguments that King makes about Vietnam are related to the ones our Unitarian Universalist Association and the Churches for Middle East Peace made in their October statements about the crisis in Israel and Gaza. Ceasefire, de-escalation, restraint, obey international law and cease war crimes, release hostages and protect civilians. Of course, LBJ did not end US involvement in Vietnam because King made a speech. And the crisis between Israel and Hamas in the present iteration will have gone for 100 days tomorrow. I have no illusions that Netanyahu or Hamas leadership will hear what some religious liberals in Massachusetts are saying, and not much that Biden will either. But like King, I remember that we are struggling for our own souls here too. King could have ended his speech after presenting his case for what the US government should do, but he didn't. He ended with a message of universalism and nonviolence and love. Not a cute love, but a love that demands that we recognize that we are all siblings and called to take care of one another, all of us, across borders, across every division. There is no such thing as somebody else's children. More than ever, before it's too late, we must turn from our thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society where we turn away from violence and objectification, where we make policy and individual choices from a consistent ethic of love. Something that I struggle with here is that from a relatively secure place, I know that if my pacifism demands that other people not fight, I'm at risk of becoming a passive oppressor. This is a line that I question in myself over and over again. If I demand more pacifism of other people than I am willing to enact in myself, I'm obviously going off book here. I'm wrestling with this. I don't have easy answers about it. For those of you who, like me, are not political scientists or historians, who nevertheless are living in a moment of great violence and suffering, it's okay to say that the history of Palestine and Israel is complicated and that the suffering of children and civilians is not an acceptable cost to bear. It is okay to have compassion for multiple groups of people. It is necessary to stay connected to your own soul and to your neighbors, especially your Jewish and Muslim neighbors during increased anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It is necessary to be led by love beyond allegiances. For some of us, that love might look like holding our government accountable, and for others, it might look like refusing to give up on friendships. The love we build, if it shuts no one out and holds space for all people of goodwill, is part of building that universal beloved community, that vision of a world yet to come where all people live in peace with the opportunity to flourish. With beloved community as our goal, let us build a new way together. Amen. I invite you to rise in body and spirit to sing number 1017 in that teal hymnal if you have it, and also on the screen, Building a New Way.
We
send you forth with Dr. King's conclusion to Beyond Vietnam. And if we will only make the right choice, we will be able to transform this pending cosmic elegy into a creative psalm of peace. If we will make the right choice, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our world into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. If we will but make the right choice, we will be able to speed up the day all over America and all over the world, when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Amen.